people out there from whatever rad time you're watching at whatever rad place. I'm Ryan.
I'm David.
And that makes us R-A-D, rad. And here we are again today with another rad podcast.
Yeah, no, definitely.
David, this has been a rad year.
Dude, it's been crazy, actually. I mean, I read there's so many interesting articles that have come out about education and the virtual learning of it. And even to the degree, that many countries all around the world who are used to doing standardized tests have had to cancel that. And that's really got me thinking, like, what's the impact of that right there, right?
I think it's gonna be really strange to see what happens with these kids that are going to the university right now, and what does that mean with the future of standardized testing and things like that. I have no idea what's going on in the U.S. with the SATs and ACTs and all of that stuff. So we decided to invite a couple of guests to talk about this topic with us, specifically pertaining to Colombia. So I suppose without further ado, we should welcome Juliana and Maria Antonia.
Awesome, guys. Hey, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for attending. I didn't know about your topic until this began, but find it interesting, standardized testing. For you guys, what made you interested in doing a senior project around standardized testing?
Well, we were interested in doing this topic because it is like a real big problem in the school. We have our last scores were like a little bit low, and our motivation for the test is like real low. So when we think that we are going to present Brata, we don't really care about it. So we want to change that perspective because this exam is really important and it can define your life. So like, even if you're going to a university that doesn't require this exam or that doesn't require a really good score, you should be motivated and always do like the best you can do.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And for you, Juliana, what drew you into this topic?
Is that I have a cousin that she graduated last year. And okay, Maria Antonia and I, we were looking like for topics for our senior project. And we get like really interested in the state test because like last year, as Antonia said, the scores get lower than like, it was one of the worst. So we were like, oh, what is happening? And we want to research about that.
Make sure that the school is preparing you for the state test and getting you ready for it.
Oh, absolutely. Gotcha. Very, very interesting.
So I find it most interesting that this is the first year that somebody has really kind of taken this topic for the senior project. And it just so happens to be the first year that the test has been canceled, obviously, because of our bigger situation now. It's no secret to anybody that the ICFES was postponed and then eventually just canceled for the current session, right? So I guess the important thing to do would be, first of all, that you guys maybe tell us a little bit about what specifically were you looking to study about or find out about this test, and then has this circumstance that we're living in right now, has this affected your research in any negative ways or made you change your outlook, or was your project able to continue as normal?
Basically, our project is like doing fine, is normal because we already have done all the research that we needed and all we have already conducted all the interviews and questionnaires. So we were like done with that part. But the idea of us doing this podcast is that we were trying to impact the students' attitude. That is one of our objectives, but that is like really hard if we are in our homes and we don't have like touch with the students of 11th grade and 10th grade that were like our main objective for impact their attitude, because in this moment, if COVID-19 was not a thing, we were all 12th graders, we already have presented the ICFES test. So we were not like trying to motivate us. We were like, our project is for the rest of the school, not for us.
It's very altruistic. I like that. Very nice. Very nice. And, you know, I'm curious about one thing. Do you guys believe that, actually, for one, can you maybe explain the IC test? Is it math, Spanish, science? Because, you know, there's other countries that focus on a very smaller spectrum, but does the IC test kind of cover a lot more than what, you know, a few other, I don't know. Explain the IC test to me, because I'm someone, you know, new to Colombia, not too sure of what it is exactly.
Yes, so the ICFES has like so many like areas that evaluate. Like the most important that we identify is reading. That is like the Spanish, that is reading comprehension. That is like the one like most important. Also we have math, English, social studies.
Oh, wow.
And also science that evaluates chemistry, physics, and biology.
Wow. Okay, so that you know, many countries do standardized testing, but yours is very you know, broad in spectrum. Honestly, it's very I find that interesting. Do you think that? Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
Which test did you take, by the way? Just curious.
So for me, I took SATs, yes, and I took the ACTs as well. But when I was in England, because I didn't quite get to A levels at 18, but I was in England for a large part. England, honestly, is one of the highest standardized testing countries. It's shocking the number of tests that you take. You take a test at 13, your 13 plus exams. You take the GCSEs, which is like 14 subjects that you take at 15. And then you do your AS levels at 17 and A levels at 18. And those are all like, you know, it's a very strange system, because it's like it's categorizing students from 13 all the way to 18. And like it's like a track of progression, you know, in many ways. So I'm familiar.
So your possibilities are limited by how you do on those tests from the time that you're 13?
Exactly. Yeah, like your GCSEs, but put it this way, right? You take your ICFES at 17, and that is a very broad kind of coverage. In England, you choose after 16, 3 or 4 subjects that you want to take. And those are the only subjects that you ever take. So if you said, oh, I was really bad in English class at 15 or 16, then you say, don't have to take it anymore. I'm done. And it's like, oh, if I'm quantitative, I start doing, you know, maybe sciences, and then, you know, it's almost as if you have to make a life decision at that age all of a sudden, because you choose 4 subjects. And for me, honestly, when I was 16 and living in England, I had no idea what subjects I was going to study. It's like, wait a second, I only choose 4. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Oh, okay. So that means my life is now going to be planned. Yeah.
I think that's sort of the interesting part, to compare all the different systems that we're talking about here today, because I got my experience from the US and you share some of that, but also you have some history with England, and then we can kind of compare with the Colombian system, which is also very interesting. Like in the US, we just with the ACTs and SATs, we just test language and mathematics really is all we test. So kind of interesting to see the difference. Sorry to take us off track there. So ladies.
Absolutely. No, but it'll be interesting.
Or David, I think you were going to ask something, but maybe you don't remember what you were going to ask.
No, I do. Do you guys believe that it's an accurate measurement, the IG test, in terms of intelligence?
No, not really. Because it just measures like there are multiple intelligences. Like you can, like all of us, we are not good at everything. We have like some competences and we're good in just some stuff. We can be good in other stuff, but we have to work really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting.
So it just measures like some competences and some ability. So it's never going to be like really, really accurate in the results, or it's not going to measure all your competences and your intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. And for you, Juliana, what do you think?
I think that like it is not the appropriate way like to evaluate the students, because like we have seen like some people that are really intelligent and they do very well at school, but maybe their score in this test are not so good. And we
Yeah.
have been like looking for this, and we like found that like standardized testing like just ask for some competencies that not just people like have them.
I think, I don't know, maybe you guys wouldn't disagree, but I think one of the big things about standardized testing is there's a special ingredient in education that is often overlooked, and it's work ethic. It's hard work, right? It's like, are you able to work consistently throughout the week? Are you able to, and I think work ethic is by far one of the greatest skills you can develop in youth, especially going to school. Do you guys think that, these standardized tests, they just clean out the work ethic of students? Or does work ethic play a role in the standardized test?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So do you think having a work ethic, right? As in like at the moment, you guys have to do your own work ethic in many ways because you're having to do work at home. Do you think that a work ethic should be included in the evaluation of the IGT test, or should it just be erased? Because that's what standardized testing does, right? It ignores work ethic and looks at just material, right? But work ethic is something that's important now and it's important in the future.
Yeah, I like for my part, I think that it should evaluate work ethic too, but like all standardized tests that were like are they do not evaluate that part. They are just focused like in knowing if students have some competencies that they think that they are going to need in the future.
Yeah.
But I think like for example here in Colombia, the part about social studies also have one about like citizen competencies, something like that.
Yeah.
That is, I think it's similar because it requires you like to think like if you are like a good citizen, like what will you do in some occasions. So I think it is important and it should be included like more.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
No, I wanted to bring up something about David's question because you talk about work ethic, and it's interesting to me because, again, now going back to my experience in high school, I remember not my high school wasn't the most amazing school ever. I- I'll be honest, probably about 15 to 20% of the students who I graduated with, I think, went on to like go to college or go to the university. I mean, and I don't think that that's very low, maybe on average, really. I think it's pretty normal. But let's say they didn't give us a lot of like help to think about, going to a great university or anything like that. They didn't really encourage us to prepare ourselves for these standardized tests. Um, I took one practice one in 11th grade, and then when I was in 12th grade, I took the real test. Um, when I compare that to these kids in Colombia, and I see how they're preparing themselves, many of the students, I don't know if you're aware of this, but many of the 11th and 12th grade students are going to extra classes during the week or even on the weekends to prepare themselves for this test. And so it's interesting because then when we talk about work ethic, to a certain extent, there is a certain work ethic in that you commit yourself and your time
Oh,
and
yeah.
your effort to
Yeah.
going to these classes and preparing yourselves for that test, right? And I think that was one of the questions that Maria Antonia and Juliana had kind of at the beginning was like, should we have to do all of this extra preparation? Are things like this necessary, or should the test measure your level, like we were talking about competency, And I think that's a philosophical question, right? It's not a question that has a concrete answer, but I'm wondering, as you guys went through this process of research, what's your thinking been on that topic? Like all of these extra classes that we take to prepare ourselves for the ICFES, should that be happening? Do they really work? Do they give you an advantage? Are they worth it?
Okay, so something that we found is that it is very important to practice like daily. Like the most famous pre-ICFES here in Colombia are only like on Saturdays, like all morning. But we found that that is not so good, because the important thing is like the constant practice. And for example, one of the schools that is like the best of here in Pereira, the Liceo Campestre, we figured out that they made pre-ICFES but on Tuesday and Thursday. Was like a great difference from others.
So doing
And
it 2 times a
also,
week is
we found
noticeably
out that
better.
we did some questionnaires to 11 and 12 graders of Liceo San Miguel, and also to some students of Marymount in Barranquilla and Liceo Campestre, and we found out that 80% of the students that answered these questionnaires are in a pre-ICFES, because 56% of them think that the school is not preparing them for this state test. So that's why all these kids and students are going like doing all this preparation. But we also found out that there are a lot of kids that are not motivated to be in this pre-ICFES, or like they don't want to. They're just there because it is like an obligation, because having a good result in the state test can like open you a lot of doors, but sometimes we don't want to work hard on that. We just like things in the easy way.
No, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here a little bit. Do you think, in many ways, from what you guys have described, you know, saying that it doesn't prepare us, school doesn't prepare us for the ICFES test, right? This is the question that I'm going to ask is, you know, in adulthood, you have to take a test. I mean, it's just, you have to. Life is a test once you're after 18. But do you guys think that maybe taking a test at a young age prepares you? Or does it make you fear the future tests that you have to take even more?
In my perspective, I think that it's something that we have like to accomplish and that we have to make, but I think that it is not the way, and for me it is like a really stressful situation. Like I have to think like, my result is going to be good enough? Am I going to like enter to universities that I want to? Because sometimes all this exam depends on my life. So it is like really stressful, and sometimes it is like something that we don't want to do. So that's why like people are not motivated.
But you keep coming back to this topic of motivation. So do you think that motivation is the real key to the success on the test? I mean, do you think that if properly motivated, that students would take the test more seriously then, and then would therefore do better on it? Or do you think that that's not going to be sufficient or not enough?
I think it is very important. Absolutely. Motivation gives you like the ideas, like you should work for it, you should study and things like that. But also it is important to know like the best methods you can prepare. I mean, like motivation is very good, but you also have like to take action. Like not just like, oh yes, I know, I like the ICFES, I'm going to do great. No, it's also about like preparing and studying for the test.
Yeah. In many ways, this is what you're kind of summarizing, right? Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do, right? Having that motivation in many ways to, I think, you know, trusting yourself is a motivational aspect. It's like, do you believe in you? And if you believe in you, you must have more, I mean, you know, you clank the gears and you start putting things in the into the sixth gear, and you're just straight on if you have a lot of trust and belief in yourself, right?
Yes, and that influences a lot in how you take the test and in the score you're going to get, because when you enter to the exam and you're feeling good, you are happy, you have motivation, you know that you can do it because you have been like prepared all your life for this test, you're going to do better. But if you're like sad or stressed, it has been proven that you are going to worse in the test and that you're going to have this stress and you are going to like the time is not going to be enough. So it's better to be relaxed, to take the test like something that is really good for you and like something that is fun, because it is going to define our future. It's like a really big thing, but it is something that we are doing it because we are prepared for this test and we can. So it is not something impossible. You can do it.
Oh, that's a good point. Good point. Go ahead.
Well, you're talking again. So if we are talking about motivation, then as a very key factor, which I think that's clear. And what have you been able to find with your research with the students? What is motivating to them, and then what is demotivating? I mean, obviously, maybe the big idea of taking the test can be slightly demotivating. As you said, it's scary, it's intimidating because it's about your future. But what factors can start to help motivate students, or how can we start from an early age? I mean, David has 9th graders. Like, it'd seem kind of funny to say, like, how can we get people excited about the ICFES or excited about testing? But to a certain extent, that's my question. Like,
candy only goes so far, Ryan. Candy only goes so far.
So what have you found? What have you found in the real students reporting? I mean, what motivates them, and what makes them motivated?
Well, it's like what Juliana was saying. A lot of breakfasts are just on Saturdays, but we need constant practice. So if we like start showing these tests since 9th grade or 8th grade, the people are going to be more familiarized with it, and they are not going to be like so bored because they already have some preparation with it. They have worked this type of questions. They know what this test is going to ask them, like what are the tricks, something like that. Because when we get to 12th grade, the first thing that they told us is that we are going to present the ICFES. Is now the time that we are going to prepare you. You need to do this. We are going to open up our ICFES on Saturdays. We have these classes. This exam is going to be with the type of question that the ICFES uses. But it is like something that just like explodes in our faces. It is like something that we were not prepared for. Like, it's time now, but it is something like, it is like a surprise for us. We know that it was coming, but it is not something that we expected. So we think that the motivation with the students can like work together with the work since like 9th grade or 8th grade. So like they have to start working since really small and get familiarized with the test. So like this, they are going like, this is not going to be a really big challenge. It is going to be just one step more to them to get to their future life.
Also, I think that like another important thing like to motivate the students is about letting them know, like for some scholarships that most of university in the country has. Like we think is very sad, like for example to us, like only now in 12th grade, the ethics teacher, Lina, was like showing us the scholarship that we can get. And they are not just so like impossible. No, we saw that we can achieve it, but we have to work. So I think it's also important, so like since 9th grade, to show students like why they can like achieve, for example.
In my opinion, motivation comes in the two forms, extrinsic and intrinsic, right? In many ways, do you guys think that a high score, let's say, I'm guessing it's graded out of 100, let's say you get 100 on the IG test, right? You know, like you do like absolutely the best of the best, not many students get in the, okay, 500.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's say you get, okay, well, now I know the grading system. Okay, let's say you get 500 on the IG test. You know, in many ways, wouldn't that have been like an extrinsic factor more than an intrinsic factor? In the sense of extrinsic, right, motivation is things outside, like do well on the test, kids, and then I give you candy. Candy is extrinsic motivation, right? But intrinsic motivation is do well on the test and you're going to feel good, right? Do you guys think that, especially it being a test for university, that people are more extrinsically motivated or intrinsically motivated?
I think that both, but like in the video that we want to show everyone, like they are saying like, this is your opportunity. You have been working in this like all your life. So if you continue like, or if you're like lazy or you don't want to do it, somebody is going to take all your opportunities, because a lot of people are aspiring to get to the top, aspiring to get better. Like in the video say something like the billionaires that we are like we want to be like them, or that we think that they are in a step of success really like high. We want to be like them, but they have like the same time that we have, but they use in like things that can make them feel better, that they are going to make them better in the future. So the thing that we need to is to make all this time that we have, and like we have to do is take the next step, like do everything right. Like we cannot give up. We have to keep fighting for all of our purposes to get where we want to get.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And I also consider like like you call the intrinsic motivation is like low in the students, and it should get like higher, because like finally it's just like a opportunity to prove yourself to yourself. Like, you know, like you have been studying like all this year in high school, and you know, like you may do your best and trust yourself.
The reason I ask that in many ways is because, for example, right? Let's say you want to work on the stock market. Guess what? You have to take a test. Let's say you want to become a lawyer. Guess what? You have to pass a bar. You know, the first standardized testing ever was in China during the Han Dynasty, and that was the year 600, I think. And if you wanted a government position, you had to take a standardized test, right? So in many ways, those future standardized testings that happened, whether it was for, you know, become finance, lawyer, doctor, even, you know, all those standardized testings that were put in place, in many ways, you're like intrinsically motivated, because it's like, not only do I have a job, but I can define myself now, right? So that's what I think, you know, is critical for kids, is that intrinsic motivation, because you may do very well on the ICFES and go to a very good university in Colombia, right? But what are you going to study, right? You may say, oh, you may already know, or you may not know, even if you do well. But in many ways, those tests that I mentioned earlier were so specific because you're giving yourself an identity in many ways, I think, right? Yeah. So I'm going to show that video that you guys mentioned to me. Let's see. This is the one, right? Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
What's the problem? You've been waiting your entire life for this moment. This golden opportunity.
Well, okay.
This rare occasion. This chance to do what so many other people don't get to do. What they don't get to accomplish. What they don't get to experience. What they can only imagine. But you're here. You made it to this point. You've arrived at this pinnacle place in your life. It would be a shame to mess it up. A shame to miss this chance. All because you allowed fear to trump faith. Time waits for no man. Once it's gone, it's gone. It doesn't roll over. Time goes forward. Time never goes backward. The time is now. There has never been a more promising time to achieve greatness. I heard someone once say that greatness is within you, but it's dormant. It's bottled up, just waiting for the moment to unleash and show the world how great you really are. How talented you can be. How amazing your skills are. I'm not sure if you know or not, but there are hundreds, no, scratch that, thousands, let me try again, millions of people that would kill to be in your shoes right now. They would give up food, sleep, TV, cell phone, and any other luxury of the world just to be given the opportunity you have right now. But instead of taking advantage of it, instead of capitalizing on it, you're too busy eating. You're too busy sleeping. You're too busy being distracted by what's on television. You're too occupied with what's trending on social media. Every second you're not working, your competitor is. In other words, you don't have time to chill. You don't have time to just hang out. You don't have precious moments to lose. That same billionaire that you idolize has the same 24 hours that you have. Imagine that. The same 86,400 seconds in a day. Do they waste it? You better work your butt off every single second that you have. Or you will find yourself saying, I should have, but it'll be too late. The time would have already passed. Your chance will be lost. Your golden opportunity will fall in someone else's lap. Don't do that to yourself. You worked too hard up until this point. You put too much blood, too much sweat, too much tears, too many late nights of studying into your craft to ease up now. The time is now. Not only is it important to you, but it's important to your family. It's important to your friends. It's important to every young child that looks at you as a role model. And you had no idea you were being watched. There are young kids in your neighborhood that aspire to be like you. They want the opportunities you've been given, but they may be too shy to tell you. And so they watch from a distance. Don't let them down. The time is now. Everyone in your corner is rooting for your success. Everyone in your corner wants to see you shine. Everyone in your corner wants to see you win. Everyone in your corner believes you. The question is, do you believe you?
Hey, if there's a YouTube to get me pumped up during the day, that might be it, honestly. Yeah. Bah, bah, bah. Come at me, bro. Yeah.
In this video, we were trying to show that motivation is everything. Life gives us a lot of opportunities that we cannot throw to the garbage. Like we have to enjoy, and we have to take all the risks. We have to be brave, because like if we don't take that opportunity, somebody else is going to take it, because this world is not going to be like you are going to be like the best, or you are not going to achieve all your dreams and goals if you are like the video says in your bed, or like sleeping, or waiting like for everything to get solved by your parents or something like that. You have to fight, you have to be brave, you have to take courage of all the things that you want and make them possible.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
go ahead, Ryan. Sorry, I felt like you're about to say something. You know, in many ways, I think, and this is one of my favorite quotes, and I definitely live by it. The greatest risk of life is to do nothing. You know, it's like even opening something up and reading, and you know, you may have something incredibly fearful in front of you, and you're like, "Ooh, I got to avoid it. I got to avoid it." But the greatest risk of life is to do nothing, right? Which is in many ways avoiding. I think like even if it's something that you do, you're minimizing risk at some point or another, right?
Yeah, exactly. Any movement is positive in some kind of direction. I mean,
Exactly.
but very dangerous to stay in one place, I think. So very cool, very cool. Now, as far as this year goes, again, we mentioned that you are in a special case, right? So explain to us what is going to happen to the class of 2020, the class who did not take the ICFES. How has your experience so far been as far as applying to universities, or I don't know if you've started with it yet, or how's that going to go? I mean, are they going to eventually give you the test, or what's going to happen with that?
Yes, like some universities like always has like their own admission test. So like for them, like there's no problem. Like you just require to be like subscribe to the ICFES. Like even you don't have a result. But like other universities that require like a minimum of a score, they create also tests like for example La Javeriana, you know, like for example for medicina, they ask like for a score, and then you can go for an interviews and things like that. But for example, this year we don't have ICFES, so they made their own test, and they usually don't do that. But I think like also like it is an advantage and also a disadvantage. It is an advantage because like we say like the ICFES can open many doors, but can also like close you many doors like if you did it bad. But in this case, like I I like to call it like if each university has a door that you have to open or close. Like each university has a test, but I think also it's a disadvantage because like ICFES is like just one day. And for example, us now applying to university, like for each university, we have to make a test that is also like all day long, and we have to make like so many tests.
Wow.
And like a lot of universities are applying like these type of exams, El Rosario, Savannah, a lot of universities, and we know that these tests can be boring, but they will define like your life. So if you don't become aware of this, someone else will, and him or this someone will fulfill all your dreams, and he will reach the top where we all want to get. So like the idea is like we have to take conscious that these tests can be like sometimes like a bit like little bit like really boring, or like they can take us to a level of stress really high, but like they are necessary in our lives, because this is like some steps that we have to get, and we have to be like aware that if we don't take these steps, we are not going to get really far.
Very interesting.
It's going to be a complex process then to get you guys to where you need to go. But But I guess it brings up also another interesting aspect of these standardized tests, right? Which is interesting because we call them standardized, and yet when every university has their own test, then that's definitely not
Standardized. The irony there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I was going to go somewhere else, and then right. But how they work for both projecting to the future, right? We know that standardized tests are important for your entrance into the university, but the other story that they tell is the one about the past, right? I mean, schools also use their results from the ICFES to understand how they're doing, to understand how they're teaching the students, and to from that make adjustments in their curriculum and things like that. And that's one of the things that you guys have been focusing on too. So you have some recommendations for the school in terms of how to prepare the students in a better way, right? So I'm wondering if you wanted to share some of those today, or what other kind of advice do you have for students in the future, for the school specifically? What other things have come about as a result of this project that you guys have been working on all year long now?
Okay, so something that we find out that like is missing to the school is that, for example, we need to practice these type of questions like science ninth grade. It will be a great idea, like other schools, they do that and like they work, because like for example us, we had never like seen those type of questions until we get to like to the simulacros, but also they are like strange for us and we are not like prepared for facing these type of questions. So something that should be like implemented in the schools is that, for example, in the evaluations like of all areas should be included like a part of the test with these type of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that is like really important that I think that Julian already told us before, that is reading. All these exams and all standard tests are about reading. If you misunderstood the question, you're going to get the answer wrong. So I think that the students like in sixth grade or even fifth grade, fourth grade, they have to start like with some reading habits, because I know that we have book reports of Spanish and English, but they are not enough because these are homework. We have to like teach the students that reading is really important and that it is actually fun, and that if they learn to read, because you learn to read, you're going to do better in this test and in life.
And you won't be so demotivated when you get to the test and you find a big page of text and you have to read through it and then answer questions.
That's like the worst.
I noticed that, but yeah, I always personally, I always think with myself as a reader, I always think, well, it's just a page. But I have
but sometimes like they don't teach us to read, because like some factors is that we get tired. Some people read like this, like moving their heads or something like that, so they are not doing like their job. Okay, because even for reading there is a correct way to do it, and if you are not used to it and you get to these like these mocks that are like 36 pages long, you are not going to be any motivated, and you're just going to want to finish these mocks like really quick. So you are going to be like, oh, A, B, C, D.
Above all, I think it comes down to reading strategy, you know? I think that's the really key element. Yeah, okay, reading. And then reading, obviously people read at different paces, you know, and it takes reoccurring reading in order to make you read faster, or, you know, if you don't read for a period of time, then you're reading a little bit slower. But I think reading strategy, as you've talked about reading, you know, is absolutely fundamental when you see those tests. I've known people for standard evaluations to say, oh, when there's a standard evaluation, I read everything. including the instructions, and including, I always read the text and then I do the questions. And it's like, no, no, no. You read the questions and then you go through the text, because then you know what you're, you know, under a time constrained environment, what you're looking for. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Having strategies. And have you guys, so in those terms, have you guys felt like where in your high school careers have you been well prepared for those types of things, and maybe what would be necessary, what kind of specific strategies, or where would you see room for more reading practice? Do you think that reading in all subject areas might be an important thing to do, or other ideas for improving the school? Because I guess in the end, that's the point of your project, right? Was to help the school get better and things like that. So what other types of suggestions, advice, stuff like that?
Basically, for reading, when we are reading something in any area and we don't like, I'm going like example, I don't like physics, and they told us we have to read this book about the galaxy, but I don't like physics, so I'm not going to be like really interested in reading this book. So the idea is not some just in just some subjects like to read some kind of things. No, it's like the students can be free to choose what they are going to read like in a period of time. We found out like in Liceo Campestre here in Pereira, they have before before our school like schedule, we have meditation, but they don't have that. They have is like 30 minutes of reading. So from 8 to 8:30, the students can read, but they have to read like anything they want. So the kids, because they do that like since really early, like first grade or something like that, they like to read, and they like, oh yes, I want to read this comic book, or no, I want to read this about nature. They can be free of what they're going to read, but they have to start to teach themselves to read.
Okay, so daily reading, mandatory. That's cool. 30 minutes a day. That's awesome. I would personally, I would love that. I think that would be a great way to start every day of school. I'm totally in for that plan.
But the idea, like in our primer that we are going to show in our senior project presentation, and that it is going to be like a school property, like the teachers and everybody can see like some of our strategies and recommendations for this test and for improvement, basically.
Well, I'll be super behind that one. I'll definitely be supporting that one. That sounds like a great policy. It's my favorite policy so far. 30 minutes of reading every morning. Love it.
Oh, dude, the thing that I like about reading is that I trip out on reading. Yeah. So like just before a class begins, I'm tripping out, and then the class begins, you know? So yeah, I'd love that, honestly. Yeah.
Right. I love when I'm reading something and then I just like start laughing, and everybody's just like, happens to me all the time. Cool. Well, anything else that you girls wanted to talk about as far as your project? I mean, any final words or any last pieces of sage-like advice? You two have spent your entire senior year studying this topic and preparing yourselves for this moment. So here you are. What is your godlike advice?
I would like to say people like to take this seriously. Like, also, if you already know like which university, even if it doesn't require, like, it is also to prove yourself, to show your parents the school, and to do your best.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with Juliana. It's like we want everybody to be motivated. Like, this is your opportunity to prove yourself, to prove to your parents, but most important to know what you are capable of.
Cool. Important words to give to the young students, right? You know that David's students are in 9th grade. They're about at that age that you guys were talking about, where they need to, you know, start tuning in, start thinking a little bit about this, because it's real. It's going to happen to them just like you, kind of.
No, absolutely.
And so important things to think about. Very cool. Well, I believe that.
I think that's a show, and I gotta say, Maria, Antonia, and Juliana, you guys, I mean, trust me, when it comes down to standardized testing and education, there were so many tangents that I wanted to go with that. I wanted to go left, I wanted to go right, I wanted to go north, south, east, west, but end of the day, we stayed on the path. So thanks for bringing in the topic, and like you've talked about, honestly, you know, the future's unwritten, you know, so who knows about ICTest in the future and what they might look like, you know, maybe this new policy of each university doing their thing might be a thing. Who knows? Who knows?
And you guys let David say ICFES wrong the whole podcast.
Wait,
ICFES.
Oh, FES. Oh my goodness me. Well, I have to fess up to something. I've done a very bad job on this podcast, by goodness me. All right, well.
I was waiting to see if they were going to correct you, because, you know, they're the experts, right?
Apparently, I was talking about the wrong exam from start to finish. Okay, that's a good thing then.
I think it's a good name, though. I think they should think about renaming it to the IC test. The IC test.
Yeah, the test. Oh, fantastic. So, that's all,
viewers.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll see you next time.
Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for having us.